What's going on, everyone? It's Ben from YGO from Zero, back with another Retro Yu-Gi-Oh! Video, and in this video we're going to be covering another Cyber format deck. Now, if you're not familiar with Cyber format, it is the format held in September 2005 with the GOAT format Forbidden List, but also with the new cards from Cybernetic Revolution and some collector tin promos like Xarian Universe here. And this leads to a format that is similar to GOAT in some ways, but very, very different, because you have things like Stein decks just, taking over the metagame, because Stein can go into things like, Cyber Twin Dragon and Cyber End Dragon, and also you have things like Cyber Dragon just accelerating the pace of play a lot. So a lot of the decks that were more viable in GOAT format are a lot less viable in Cyber format. Not terrible by any means, but definitely worse than they are in GOAT. One of the decks that is probably still on a similar level of power, though, is Warriors. Now, Warriors in GOAT format is one of the sort of top 3 decks of the format. It basically can play with a bunch of big beaters that don't need much setup, and also can toolbox into a variety of options with reinforcing the army, going into things like Exiled Force, Mystic Sword level 2, or even Ninja Grandmaster Sasuke here. So Warriors is a very versatile deck, very flexible deck, and even though there have been a lot of changes in Cyber format, I do think it is still very strong here, and it actually has won past tournaments. The list that you're seeing here in front of you is based on a list that AJTBLS used to win an event in the past in this format. So I figured I'd adjust it a little bit, because there were some definitely very interesting decisions that I feel like were maybe not the best if you want to play the deck. And, I sort of adjusted it and made this own build here, which is basically the same as that deck, but just with some slight changes. So let's just go through the card by card real quick. For the monsters, we got BLS as the boss. You are playing enough lights and darks to justify this, and BLS is just such a house if you actually manage to stick it, so definitely worth playing in this deck. We got double Blade Knight here. Blade Knight is one of your most powerful warriors, can be 2000 attack a lot of the time, which is hard for your opponent to get over, although Cyber Dragon does make it a bit worse. Speaking of Cyber Dragon, this deck is playing 2 Cyber Dragon. I think maybe you could up this to 3, because again, Warriors is an aggressive deck, so having 3 cards that allow you to get even more aggressive can be pretty good. But I do think that 2 is fine here as well, because you're not using this setup like Monarch plays, and it can be a bit bricky if you already have a field set up. So I think 2 makes sense for the main. I did actually put an additional copy of Cyber Dragon inside, though, but I think going second, it's good to have 3 copies, because, then you can really guarantee that you can get aggressive early on. But we've got a breaker here as well to pop your opponent's spells and traps. It's also a good dark. We got a DD Warley to banish our opponent's threats. We got Don's Loot to rip their hand. We got Xarian Universe here. This is a very interesting card. It is very powerful in the context of GOAT format, because it's very, very good against GOAT control. That's one of the reasons why, in sort of like the debate about whether to include the collector tin promos in GOAT format, they ultimately decided against it, because this card was very, very good in that context. In modern GOAT format, I'm not sure if it would still be seen as quite as good, and in Cyber format with things like Cyber Dragon running around, I'm not sure how good it is, but we'll test it out in these games and see exactly how it does. But we got an Exiled Force here as well to search off Rhoda. We got double Kaiku the Ghost Destroyer to, banish cards from our opponent's grave. I'm not necessarily sure how necessary this card is, but it is an 1800 beater at worst, so that's not terrible. But, I'm not really sure how viable, like, a lot of, like, all-in Chaos decks are going to be if they're not, like, Chaos Return or something like that that's a bit more explosive. So in the future, we'll see about whether this card stays in the deck or not. But as is, it's a good 1800 Dark Beater, so that's pretty good. And lastly, there's Mystic Sword in level 2 and Ninja Grandmaster Sasuke to deal with specific monsters. Like, this can deal with set monsters. The Sasuke can deal with face-up defensive monsters like Grave Reaper, Spy, etc., or Spirit Reaper as well. So both these cards are pretty good here. For these spells, there's Book of Moon, very, very versatile card in this format. Delinquent Duo, Graceful Charity, and Pot are also still legal here, so they're all in the deck. We got a Heavy Storm and an MST for spell and trap removal. We got Double Knock to just continue getting aggressive here. Against certain decks, this knock will be dead, but you can always side that out. And having an in game 1 can be very good, especially if you're up against a Steinarch player or something like that, and they just set 1 and pass, try and set up like a Monarch play next turn. If you knock their card, then that can potentially cause them a bit of difficulty there. There's a Pot of Greed as well, as I mentioned. Premature Burial to bring back your monster from grave. Rhoda to tutor out a variety of tools from the deck that you might want. We've got Snatch Steal as well to take control of our opponent's stuff. For the trap lineup, we got Call the Haunted to bring back our stuff. A Dust Tornado to deal with our opponent's spells and traps. We got a Mirror Force here to deal with their aggressive pressure. A Ring of Destruction, which I forgot to switch out from the Grenade art to the Fire art. I like the Fire art better. I think it's cooler, but, it was like this in the deck that I, sort of pulled from, so that's what's here. But we've got the Sakuretsu Armors here as well to just simple 1-for-1 removal there. We got Solemn Judgments to shut down our opponent's plays. This can be very, very good if you play it well. If you play it poorly, it can definitely come back to bite you and cause you to lose the game, but oftentimes Solemn can be very, very strong, especially if your opponent's going all in on a super, super explosive play of their own. We got a TT to clear away our opponent's stuff, and lastly, we got triple Dust Shoots to rip apart their hand. For the side deck, we got a Sidra here, as I mentioned before. We got Double Dust Wombat for the burn matchup, 2 Gravekeeper's Spy. Yeah, this was what I cut down on to put a Cyber Dragon in the side deck. There were originally 3 Gravekeeper's Spy here. I'm not really sure what deck you're bringing in the Spies against, because Spy is a bit awkward in this format, because it doesn't really stop something like Cyber Dragon. But I could definitely see, certain situations where you'd want to bring this in, especially if your opponent sort of and expecting it. It can be good. We got double King Tiger Wagyu for like goat control stuff. We've got double Mobius the Frost Monarch for one back row focused deck. We got another Book of Moon. We got a Sakuretsu as well. We got double Threatening Roar for the more explosive OTK decks. And we've got double Widespread Ruin potentially to stop things like, King Dragoon style decks trying to get out that monster. Fusion deck we probably won't go into, but it still is good to have one here because, you might potentially take control of your opponent's Cyberstein off a Snatch Shield or something and then be able to go into these. So it's good to know about this, but, realistically, these won't be your ultimate game plan here. And also, the Fusion deck is sort of proxied in this format. It's unlimited, just like in GOAT. So, if you do need an additional Fusion monster, you can just say, like, oh, I have this in my Fusion deck, etc. But it is good to have the full 15 cards in your Fusion deck for sure. But that's going to do it for the deck breakdown. Let's dive into some games and see how this deck actually plays. Okay, we got our first game here against Jin Bob, who's a frequent guest on the channel, I believe. I think we've had them on the channel before. They're definitely a frequent guest on the Discord server, which, if you want to join any games in these formats, that's the best place to do so because it's very easy to find games there. We've got roles for that sort of thing. And also we hold tournaments in these formats as well. So if you like what you see in these videos, definitely head on over there and join that. But we open, and we got a pretty good hand. We can just summon out this Ninja Grandmaster Sasuke. Set Dust Shoot, set Book is what I do. No, I guess I just set Dust Shoot, set Dust. Because, oh no, I set all 3, yeah. I think setting all 3 is fine. They go heavy here, that's unfortunate. But like, I don't know. They're not going to heavy the one Dust Tornado. Dust Tornado could be dead. And like, I don't know, we want the Book just in case they have multiple monsters that clear the Sasuke here. And we want the Dust Tornado to deal with their back row preemptively, so I'm just like, basically, if they've got heavy, they've got heavy, But we got Dust Shoot, so that should sort of hopefully alleviate that a little bit. So they draw, and in standby, we go for the Dust Shoot here. And we see that they've got Tribe, Sinister Serpent, Parshath, Delinquent Duo, Premat, and Magician of Faith. That's a pretty scary board. Of that, I think what we most care about is Tribe. Because what we don't want to happen here is they summon out Tribe, they pitch the Serpent, Prio Pop, our Sasuke. Because, then we wouldn't really be able to protect it. We could get over to the Tribe the next turn with Blade Knight, but then they got Premat to bring that back. I guess we got Dust for the Premat, but they've also got Duo for our hand, so we're losing these 2 cards anyways. So, yeah, I think the Tribe is the best thing to do. So, yeah, we send back Tribe. It's a bit awkward because if they ever, land Parshath on field, then that's rough for us. Also, if they, set Magician of Faith and get back a powerful spell, then that's rough for us. But, after using Duo, we won't likely have cards in hand for them to get that back and make that worth it. And, they won't really have the best pre-mat targets anytime soon. So I feel fine just sending back the Tribe there. So that's what we'll do. They're going to go for a Duo here, pitch the Exiled Force and the Blade Knight. And then they're just going to set 1 and pass. So very likely going to be the Serpent, but I'm just going to attack into it anyways, prevent them from getting that Parshath on field. And we're just going to pass back to them because Book can deal with, if they bring out the Parshath or something else. And we want to save the ring just in case they top deck heavy. So they're going to go for the Breaker here. I choose not to just immediately fire the Book. I think I could have just immediately fired the Book because realistically we're doing that in battle anyways. But if they go Breaker, Pop, Dust, and then just pass back to us, then we're fine just hitting over the Breaker here with the Sasuke and saving the Book for a better threat. So I figure either way it should be fine. But they just go to battle, they, attack in, we Book it down, and they pass back to us. We draw Knock, but no need to use the Knock at this point. We'll just attack over their Breaker, and then we'll set the ring and pass back to them. They are going to summon out a Tribe. That's very unfortunate for us. They're going to priority pop our Sasuke, and we'll just take that 16. We could have potentially ringed it, but I feel like Ring is better as a responsive trap, and we've got multiple draws that do out the Tribe on its own. So I'm fine just going for those draws, and we draw one of them right there. It's Xarian Universe, the GOAT itself. and it's going to hit over that try, pass back to our opponent. One of the reasons why Exarian was viewed as so powerful, back when people were discussing whether to include it in GOAT format or not, was because of its 1800 attack that can beat over a lot of threats in the format. But of course, also its piercing ability, and we're sort of in a situation here where that can be very good for us, because if they just go for setting like, Sinister Serpent or Magician of Faith to wall up here, then we can attack and pierce with the Exarian, and that's pretty good for us. So they go for the pre-mat here. We got the dust for that, though, so we can pop that. And they're going to set one, set another, pass back to us. We draw a Solemn Judgment here, and we're just going to hit into the set. Might as well. We can save the knock for later, but right now I'm fine just piercing in repeatedly with the Exarian. Unfortunately, they do have a book to set down the Exarian, but its defense is also very good, which is part of why it was viewed as such a threat, because especially when facing a Parshath, which we do know that they have in hand, Parshath can't clear this thing, and it can't deal damage and draw cards. So very, very good stat line here. We go for the knock in main 2. Get rid of that Moth. We're not playing any of our own. We set the Solemn, pass back to them. They are going to just set one, pass back to us, and we draw Sakuretsu Armor, which is pretty good. We're going to summon out, or we're going to flip summon the Exarian, just set the Saku, because we're probably going to set it anyways, because, if they go for a heavy, we probably just want to Solemn that. But, we're just going to attack in, play around if it's Morphing Jar. And the weird thing about Exarian is you have to declare it in the battle step, so you don't actually get to flip up the monster and see what it is, because that happens in the damage step. But yeah, we're just going to go for it. And, we figure it's like the Serpent, so we should be fine just hitting into this every turn. And that will go through. So they're just going to add back that Serpent, and they're in a bit of a tough spot if they can't draw a way to stop this. And it looks like they're just going to set another pass back to us. Now we're just going to do the same play that we did before. We're going to attack in. We're going to declare the effect to decrease the attack. But unfortunately, it's an Exarian unit of their own that does wall up against ours, which is quite unfortunate. We got Ring for that next turn if they don't attack. We got Saku if they do attack. So we feel pretty good about this. They go for heavy here. We go through the Judgment. Again, if they went for heavy, we'd kind of have to go for Judgment, because they can go for Parshath, hit over our Exarian, and that's really bad for us. So they're just going to pass back to us. It does put us in a bit of a weird spot with the Ring as well, but I think we should be able to be in a really good spot here. We bring back the Blade Knight, and we attack over the Exarian, and then attack directly with the Exarian. So that'll drop them down to 30-50. We're getting to a point where we could potentially go for a Ring play later. And we are 21-50, but there aren't many things that they can bring out here that would sort of cause us issues with that. If they bring out, like, well, they don't have a Light Engrave, so they can't bring out BLS. So yeah, we are in a really good spot here. They're just going to set one and set another, pass back to us. We just MST it in the end phase, because we should have the game wrapped up here. We don't even need to pierce with Exarian. We can just attack him with Blade Knight. It's just an Assured Priest. We attack directly with the Exarian now, and then we go for the Ring on the Exarian, and that should be the end of the game, and indeed it is. So very, very good game one. It shows the power of Exarian for sure. Even in a format with Cyber Dragons running around, Exarian can still be good. Doing that piercing is nice. Having a big body is also nice. So maybe instead of more of the Kaikus, maybe I want to put in more Exarians in the future. But our opponent's just going to start off by setting 3, passing back to us. And this is a really good start for us. We go for the heavy right away. They go for Goat. So they are indeed on some form of Goat control deck, it looks like. And we also clear Saku, so that's pretty good. We go for the Rhoda here, grabbing the Mystic Swordsman level 2. I think in hindsight, I could have just gone, run out the Warrior Lady, attacked in this set. Because if it's Gravekeeper's Spy, they're not going to be able to get the effect either way. And, what other flips am I really scared of? If it's Moth, they get back, Scapegoat, which I'm not too upset about. So, I think, honestly, just going for the Warrior Lady would be fine, especially because we don't have, backup for our Swordsman there. We could have also just gone for Blade Knight if we really wanted to. But I think the DD Warrior Lady would have been the right play. Unfortunately, we go forward to the Mystic Swordsman level 2, and we do get punished for that by the Sangan there. And, I mean, this is sort of a flaw of myself as a player. I'm not really the best at Warrior decks in GOAT, and that a lot of the skills needed for those decks definitely carry over here. Since they searched out a Serpent, we're just going to set the duo, not use it, pass back to them, and they are going to bring out a DD Warrior Lady of their own, attack into the Mystic Swordsman level 2, and that will indeed go through. They're not going to banish. They're going to set one, pass back to us. We draw an Exiled Force. So we go for the Exiled Force. We get a little bit greedy here. We try to attack into a token and then tribute it off. But unfortunately, they've got Ring for that. So that will deal with the Force. We do have pre-mat to bring it back if we want to, but we don't necessarily want to do it yet. We can save it for later. They go for a pot here, draw 2. And they're going to think about this a bit, and they're just going to attack in for 15 with the Warrior Lady here. It's a bit unfortunate, but they are going to set one, pass back to us. We draw a Trap Death Shoot, which is really good here. We get a peek at their hand. We're just going to set the Warrior Lady, set the Death Shoot, pass back to them. And then we fire the Death Shoot in standby. We actually see that they're on the Parshath in hand already. So it seems like they had that option open in the last turn, but they chose not to go for it in case we had like maybe a TT set or something like that, which is kind of rough. Yeah, we kind of have to send back the Parshath, even though the BLS is very powerful, because if they summon up Parshath, attack over our monster, we do banish it, so that's something. But, like, then they still get a draw, which I don't like. So I'm going to send back the Parshath. Yeah, maybe it's a bit greedy. Maybe I should just prioritize the late game as opposed to the game right now. But I think this is fine. I'm going to banish the DD Warrior Lady. And now they don't have lights as well for the BLS, so we can keep them off lights. Then I feel pretty good about that as well. They're going to set one, pass back to us. I feel like that is the Dust Tornado. We go for a Rhoda here, grabbing Blade Knight. And we're just going to summon out that Blade Knight, set the Sakuretsu, attack into a token. And then we're going to pass back to them. Now, I set the Sakuretsu because I figured they knew that we knew about the Dust Tornado. So I figured that they'd think that my set here would be like a bluff or something not worth Dust Tornadoing. But they do indeed take the bluff. And so unfortunately our double bluff didn't quite work. They did see through it and they did manage to pop the Sakuretsu there, which is a very important card. We draw an Xarian Universe, which is really nice. And we're going to bring that out, try and pierce over some of those tokens here. We are indeed going to do that. And deal 1,400, which is pretty good. We're going to attack into the Blade Knight as well. They've got Saku for the Blade Knight, which is a bit scary that they did it on the Blade Knight instead of the Xarian. This tells me that they might have a Parshath again, and they might have a line into it, because they do have the pre-mat here. They can pre-mat back the Sangan, and then they contribute over the Sangan for the Parshath, and then the Sangan will get a search here, and, you know, the Parshath will get a draw there, and that is very, very rough for us. So we'll take 100, and they do get to draw here. So it's not looking good. They also have a light in rotation for their BLS here, so yeah, it's not good. We bring out a Blade Knight here, and we attack over the Parshath. I think in hindsight, we probably should have just attacked into a token, prevent them from bringing out BLS next turn, because they likely have a path to victory here. But I figure I want to bait them into going for the BLS here, and if they don't have another monster that can kill us here, then they'll attack in for 4,000, which isn't, well, actually, then we couldn't use Burial. So actually, that was a bad move on my part. But, you know, I also could have potentially fired Duo to try and rip the BLS out of hand, but that's very unlikely, and they have Serpent, so it wouldn't even be the best play there. So yeah, we just lose the game here to the BLS and the DD Warrior there. So that will be the end of game 2. I definitely misplayed in that game. Again, I'm not the best Warrior player, but game 3, hopefully we can turn it around. So we are going first again, and we draw a pretty good opener, all things considered. That pot is also going to be nice to draw deeper, and we draw into Dust Shoot, so that's very, very good. We set the Xarian, we set Dust Shoot, we set Dust Tornado, pass back to our opponent here, and we go for the Dust Shoot right away. We see that they've got the Warrior Lady, the Magician of Faith, the Sidra, and the Parshath. Unfortunately, they also have a Graceful, which is rough for us because they can potentially, you know, draw into a Cyber Dragon again. But right now, I just want to get rid of the Cyber Dragon here, because that is the thing that immediately clears the Xarian. If they don't draw into that again, then I'm feeling okay here. Also, if they go for like Cyber Dragon Tribute over Parshath, then that's pretty good for us too. So I guess maybe I could have, you know, not sent back the Cyber Dragon, hopefully trying to bluff them into not going for the Parshath play. But I think it's just better to go for the Cyber Dragon now, even though this potentially does give information. And if they are on multiple Cyber Dragon in the deck and they draw into them with Graceful, then that could, you know, allow them to, you know, sort of intuit that if they go for the Cyber Dragon attack over our set, then that'll be fine. They're going to go for the Charity here, and they're going to pitch a Dark and a Light, which is very scary for me, because I'm like, uh-oh, this means that they might have a BLS here, and they just want to go aggressive early. But it looks like they're just going to go for a pre-mat on the Sangan there, and then they're going to tribute off that Sangan for the Parshath here. Sangan gets a search, so they'll search out another Magician of Faith, and then they're going to attack into our set. Luckily, again, as I mentioned earlier, the Xarian does wall off that Parshath. So this will be fine for us. We've got a Book of Moon to deal with the Parshath. We've also got a Dawn to rip into their hand. So we're going to go for an MST on that back row, book down the Parshath, summon out Zalug, and just attack in. We've also got a Light, or no, these are both Darks, but we're setting up 2 Darks in grave for our BLS later. So I feel like this is ultimately fine. But we attack in, and we do hit the Moth, so I'm very happy about that, given they had Graceful and Grave. And we're going to set one, pass back to them. Now, we set the pre-mat here because they'd already used up the heavy. They've got MST, then pre-mat dies to the MST anyways, so I feel like it's a fine set as a bluff. The only issue is if they have, like, Breaker, but if they do have Breaker, and they summon up Breaker, they want to pop the pre-mat beforehand, then they can't get over Xarian, so I'm fine with that. The big punish is if they summon up Breaker, attack over Xarian, and then pop the pre-mat, which would be very, very rough for us. But they're just going to summon out this DD Warrior, or DD Assailant, that is, an attack over the Don Zalug. We draw a knock, which isn't really useful right now, but we do just want to go aggressive here, rip the last card out of their hand. So what we're going to do is we're going to pre-map back that Dawn and attack over the Warrior with the Exarian. We're going to attack in for 14 here and rip that last card out of hand. So we're going to set the knock, pass back to our opponent, and they're going to set one pass back to us. We draw a Mystic Swordsman level 2. We could summon out that Mystic Swordsman level 2, just get aggressive. You know, that's putting them on a 2-turn clock, which actually might be the best thing to do here. But if they've got like TT set, I don't want to play into that. So I decided just to hit him with the Dawn every turn. And I don't know. I guess I could have gone for that, but I feel like it's fine just saving the Swordsman in hand, especially if they've got a set monster later, then we can summon it out, bait something out with it, and then potentially go for knock on that. But they do have pot. I choose not to mill off of Zalug last turn when I hit in because I didn't want to hit like a Serpent or something and give them the free value there. But maybe I should have because we have knocked to the Serpent anyways, and the pot was very good. But I think in general, it's better not to mill for Dawn because you're just setting up your opponent's graveyard for things potentially. They're going to bring out Sidra, attack over the Dawn. And yeah, we did get punished for our hubris there, but we're just going to set a Saku, pass back to them. Trying to bluff that we might have like TT or something set, but they're going to attack in with the Sidra. We will Saku that, and then they're just going to pass back to us. We draw Blade Knight, which is really good, but unfortunately, because we've held this Swordsman, it will actually not be able to be at 2,000, but we can still attack in, and they do have the Mirror Force for that, so we've got BLS as follow-up later, which is very nice. They're going to set one, set another, pass back to us, and we draw Sidra, so we could have just gone for BLS here with the knock that is threatening lethal, but we've got another way to threaten lethal, so I'll just do that instead. We special summon out the Sidra, we summon out the Mystic Swordsman level 2, knock their set. They're going to think about this, but they that's the end of the game. They had Sook, knock, and a Snatchsteel in hand. So that was a pretty good showing for the Warrior deck. I didn't play perfectly, especially in game 2. I think that game 2, we potentially could have won that one if I had played it a bit better. But I do think this deck is very, very strong, and I hope that these games have definitely shown that. Now, we've got some more games against Jim Bob with them playing a different deck, us playing the Warrior deck, so let's dive into that now. Okay, we got another game against Jim Bob here. We are going to lose the RPS this time. And they say that they don't really know how to play the deck in the chat, but, you know, based on these games, they did very, very well with the deck. So, you know, I think they're being a bit modest there. But they're going to go for a pot to start, and pot will always help when you're playing a new deck. And they're going to set 3, pass back to us. No heavy this time. And they do have Dust Shoot to send back our BLS. So that's a bit unfortunate, but the BLS is a late game play anyways, so I'm not too upset about losing that. We go for the Rhoda here for the Blade Knight. The reason we do this is because if that set is Moth, then Blade Knight will indeed clear it. The main punish here is if that set is Spy. If it's Gravekeeper's Spy, then, you know, Swordsman is definitely the right pick there. But if it's like Sangan, then I don't necessarily want them to just be able to search out a way to deal with our Mystic Swordsman or whatever we searched out there. So I'm fine just going for the Blade Knight instead. But maybe I should have gone for the Swordsman. Maybe it would have been a better play overall. But anyways, we just set 4 to give that Blade Knight 2,000 attack and potentially play around like Morphing Jar, even though it will be negated anyways. And we hit into a Sangan. So that Sangan will get a search there. They search out a Mystic Tomato, and we'll just pass back to them. They are going to go to standby. We use the Dust Shoot on their hand. We see that they've got a Reaper, a Tomato, a Book, a Knock, a Ring, and a Serpent. This is a bit tricky here. Not quite sure what the best card to take is. It could be the Tomato. We don't have the best way to deal with that. I think, honestly, the Serpent, though, might be the best pick. Because the Serpent gives them continual value here. We've just got one monster on board. They just wallow us up with that one monster. That's kind of annoying. And we've got ways to deal with Reaper. We've got ways to deal with Tomato, like, left in deck. So I feel like it is better just to send the Serpent for them for getting any value there. And especially given that we have the TT here to potentially blow out their board anyways. So we take note of the remaining cards in their hand. And then they're going to set 1, pass back to us. We draw a Warrior Lady here. We're just going to bring out that Warrior Lady, try to attack into the set there. And we do know about the ring, and they do use the ring on this. And we could potentially solemn this if we want to get super aggressive, attacking into the set, banishing it, then attacking directly for 2,000. You know, that's not the worst option in the world, but I think that we can save our solemns for later. I feel like we're still in a good spot, even if we lose the Warrior Lady, because again, we got so many good top decks. So I'm fine just sitting on the Blade Knight, passing back to them. I don't attack into the set because it's Tomato. I don't want to deck thin for them. I don't want to allow them to get out like Cyberstein as well if they're playing a Stein deck, which they very well might be. So I'm just going to pass back to them. They're just going to set 2, pass back to us. We draw another Dust Shoot that's a bit dead right now, but we can set it as a potential bluff. And we're going to choose not to attack into either of those sets. If they had like a Moth set or something, that'd be annoying for us here. But, like, the fact that they didn't search Moth off the Sangan, I mean, I guess we had Blade Knight, so they wouldn't do that anyways. But they probably wouldn't set him off into the Blade Knight here. So, yeah, I feel like it's probably not Moff set, and we should be fine. We go for a pot here, draw 2. We draw into a Nobleman plus Exarian, so that's really, really good. We can get some piercing action going. We can also knock one of the sets. We knock the newer set. It turns out to be the Reaper. I think in hindsight, I would have preferred if we'd hit the Tomato to get them less deck thinning, and we can just keep hitting in every turn with Exarian to just keep whittling down their life points there. But, maybe it is better that we, hit the Reaper because that walls us up, and we just want to get aggressive at this point. So we hit into the Tomato. We use the Exarian lowering effect because we know that whatever they set can be hit over by Exarian there. And they're going to bring out a Gravekeeper's Spy. So the plan here for them is very clearly, we try to attack in with the Blade Knight. They book it down, or we, just go to main 2. They book it down, and then they flip it up next turn. Either way, that's very bad for us. So I think, honestly, I'm going to use up one of my Solemns here on that book. And, I've got 2 Solemns, so I'm feeling good about that. We use this Solemn here on that book, and that will indeed go through. So we managed to hit over the Gravekeeper's Spy there, and we pass back to them. So I feel pretty good about that. They go for a breaker here. We could potentially TT. We could potentially Solemn. But honestly, I'm not too upset if they, break one of our back row. They might want to break the TT or the Solemn if they so choose, but also they could potentially go for the new back row because they don't know what it is, and TT is kind of dead to us here because we've got a full board. Our opponent doesn't, so we don't necessarily want to TT willy-nilly here. So, Solemn is very strong, but they might choose to go for the new one, which could be something like, Saku or something like that they just want to get rid of. But they are going to go for a back row, and they unfortunately hit the TT instead of the Solemn. They probably wanted to hit the Solemn there instead of the TT, but, it is what it is. They're going to go for a charity, draw into 3, pitch the Tomato and the Knock, which, Knock is pretty much dead there anyways. So this is a bit of an awkward spot for them because we can just hit over that breaker a multitude of ways. We draw another Solemn here. We're just going to attack in with the Exarian. And, the Exarians, if they, had book, we'd rather the Exarian get set as opposed to the Blade Knight. I mean, I guess they could just set down the Blade Knight here with the book, but that will indeed go through. We're just going to set another Solemn, pass back to them. And at this point, it is very important to note which are our Solemns they know about and which ones they don't. They know that this card right here is a Solemn, the one closest to deck. What they don't know is that the one under Blade Knight is also a Solemn. So they're going to go for an Exile here, try to pop the Exarian. We just let that go through. No need to Solemn that. Yes, we did have lethal if they didn't exile that, but I don't want to get too risky here when we've got the game pretty much on lock. We're going to set a Mirror Force here, pass back to them, and they're going to set one, pass back to us. We draw a Rhoda here, so we can go for Rhoda and search out an Exiled Force just to pop that set. And we will indeed do that. They go for TT. We go for Solemn on that because we got a game shot here. They go for Solemn on this, and we do just go for our final Solemn. That last back row has been sitting on field for a while, and I'm pretty sure it's dead at this point because they would have used it at an earlier time. If it's not, then good for our opponent. They did very well there. But also we have Mirror Force to protect if it actually is something. So I feel fine doing this. And we do just do that, and they just admit defeat. So it seems like that back row was indeed nothing that could stop this, and so it worked out pretty well for us there. So going into game 2, I feel pretty good about this. We don't know what deck they're playing, really. We haven't really seen much of them. I figure it might be like a Monarch deck or a Steinarch deck, but they're playing Solemns, which isn't typical in a Steinarch deck. So I keep the deck largely the same. I think, again, I bring in the extra Sidra here, potentially. Opponent's going to set 2, pass back to us. We draw Exarian, which is pretty nice. We're just going to bring out the Blade Knight because Blade Knight does clear a lot of things here. If it's like Moth to get back the Upstart, then that's pretty good. If it's Sangan, then they can search something, but still we got the Blade Knight to negate flip effects. If it's Morphing Jar, then that's pretty good for us, as we've seen, although it's probably not Morphing Jar given their hand. I potentially could have had the read that the set was like a Spy or a Tomato or a Reaper, in which case I should have gone for Rhoda to just, Surge out of Mystic Sword in level 2, hit over that. But I've got the Dust Shoot to stop any Monarch plays, so I feel like this is ultimately still fine. Unfortunately for us, it is indeed the Spy there, so they'll be able to get out another Spy. It's kind of rough. Next turn, we can go for a Rhoda, though, and bring out a Ninja Grandmaster Sasuke to try hitting into those. So it's not the worst thing in the world. It's kind of unfortunate. We go for a Dust Shoot here. We see that our hand is Braincon, Mobius, Premat, Gravekeeper's Spy, and Magician of Faith. We want to send back that Mobius because that Mobius deals with our Mirror Force. Also, they can go for Braincon on the Blade Knight, summon out Mobius, and get in for a ton of damage that we can't really deal with very easily. So Mobius is definitely the pick here. We see that they've got another Spy in hand as well as a Moth. It's a bit rough for us. But they're just going to set one, pass back. That's very likely to be Spy because they don't really have the best spells engraved to get back. And, Spy is just a 2k defender at this point, so it's not bad to bring out. we decide to think about this a bit, and then we go for Rhoda on the Sasuke. Just bring that out, trying to hit into those spies. And we're going to summon that out, try and hit into the spy, but unfortunately for us, our opponent does have ring to deal with that Sasuke, so we won't be able to do that. Now, we just hit into the set just in case it's, the Magician of Faith. It's very unlikely that it is, but it might be, so we just hit into it anyways. It is the spy. Worst case scenario, we take 4 here, and we do indeed take that 4. But we can pass back to our opponent and be relatively fine. Unfortunately, it's very awkward for us. They do have Dust Shoot here as well. So they get to send back the Breaker of the Magical Warrior here. And we're just going to set this Dust Shoot, pass back to our opponent. We go for Dust Shoot, get a peek at their hand. We see that they've got Zaborg now, in addition to their Moth and Braincon. So very glad that we Dust Shoot. Because that would make for a pretty explosive play. They tribute out Zaborg, pop our Blade Knight, get in for some damage. So I'm very happy that we went for that. And our opponent is just going to pass back to us. We draw into his Saku here, which is a bit rough. We set an Exarian here in case they draw Mobius, because we don't want to play into Mobius, and also we don't want to play into Dust Shoot, but this does turn on their Magician of Faith. I assume, they don't have any, powerful spells online right now, so realistically, it's not really the best for them to, set Magician of Faith here, or, what would they get back? Upstart? It's not really that impactful. So I feel fine just doing this, even though it does shut off the Blade Knight flip effect, because I'd rather play around Dust Shoot than play into a potential power spell off the top. Unfortunately, they drew a power spell off the top, so they can go for pot here, draw 2, and now they can set them off, pass back to us. So that's very unfortunate. We draw Cyber Dragon. I think here, what I should do is I should tribute over the Blade Knight for the Cyber Dragon, just hit into a spy, because they're not really clearing these anytime soon. And Cydra can just start eating into those spies. But instead, I just attack in with the Exarian, get rid of the Moth, and just pass back to my opponent. Now I'm playing into Dust Shoot again, which I shouldn't be doing. So, yeah, I think this is bad for us. The risk is if they, Braincon our Cydra, that's very annoying. So I kind of want to save it for that. But, I think we get a bit punished here. They go for the Zaborg, hitting in to our Exarian. And now we're in a really tough spot. Now we can special summon out Cydra, and we do indeed do that. We hit into one of their spies there. And now we just set the Kaiku to wall up, or at least pretend like we're walling up, because we do have this mirror to deal with that Zaborg. Now, I don't set the Saku or the Knock because I don't want to play into Mobius here, because if they go Braincon tribute for Mobius, then one of the only ways we're staying alive next turn is with this Sakuretsu armor. So I don't necessarily want to play into that more. But maybe I should have. They go for Braincon here. They were going to go for that either way. And then they tribute out a Zaborg to pop our Kaiku. And they try and get in for lethal damage here. Luckily, we do have the Mirror Force to clear their entire field. So I'm feeling pretty good about this, all things considered. And, opponent's going to pass back to us. We go for the pot here. We draw into Blade Knight plus Cydra. The Cydra is dead at this point. And at this point, we're like, well, if they bring out Mobius here, we're probably dead either way. So we're just going to set the Saku, set the Knock, pass back to our opponent here. Just give the Blade Knight a bit of a boost, buffing it up to 2,000. Maybe this is a bit greedy, but realistically, the Knock's kind of dead at this point. The thing we care about is Saku. So unfortunately, they go for a Mobius here indeed, and they pop our 2 back row. And now they get in for 24. Now we don't have really a way to deal with this. Maybe I should have summoned out Blade Knight, set Knock, but I don't want to play into Cydra. I wanted the Saku online for the Cydra. But yeah, it's just kind of rough. We draw into Cyber Dragon plus MST. We're just going to special summon out these Cyber Dragons, set 1, pass back to them. We could have set special summoned this in defense, but I want to bait them into thinking that we have a live back row here. Unfortunately, the MST is going to wrap that up anyways. So now we're very dead here to a variety of things. They go for the tribe, pop the Cydra, and that will just be lethal damage here, unfortunately. So that was game 2. Definitely went a bit worse for us. Again, if I had gone for the Swordsman level 2 the first turn instead of the Blade Knight, it would have been a little bit better, but they did have the ring for that anyways. So realistically, that wasn't getting through, but I think I still should have gone that because it would be the correct play to do in that situation in most cases, in my opinion. But anyways, we're going to go into game 3. Hopefully, we can acquit ourselves a little bit better this game. We go for the Blade Knight here, and then we just set a book, set a ring. I'm fine doing this because if they go for Mobius here, then we can just ring it. And that's pretty good. We've got book to stop if they've got Braincon or Snatch Steal, so I'm fine doing that as well. And if we book down our Blade Knight to stop one of those, and then we ring whatever else they bring out, then I feel pretty good about that. So I feel like this is a pretty resilient board. They go for an upstart here, so we do gain 1,000 from that. And now they're going to set 1 pass back to us. I feel perfectly fine with that. We will think about this a bit, and we just decide to, commit the Don Faluke to board here, try and get a hand rip in. It is a tomato set there, but we do have ring to deal with the tomato that they bring out off of that. So that pops that, deals a bit of damage. And now we get in for more damage plus a hand rip here. So I feel pretty good about that. We hit into a serpent. No! Oh, that's the worst value on Don Faluke. But it's not still, the end of the world, right? We're still in a good spot. We've got a light and dark on field for our BLS later, so If they do manage to clear our stuff, then we've got a great follow-up play here. Our opponent's just going to set 2, pass back to us. We draw a Rhoda, so we will go for the Rhoda, getting an Exiled Force here, and just triggering that off to destroy the set. We could have also gone for a Mystic Sword in level 2, but if they had like Saku or something, then I feel like this is a bit safer. But we're just going to go for the Force there. We hit a Reaper, so I feel pretty good about that. And we're going to set the Mirror Force to, buff up this Blade Knight and, just get in a little bit more damage there. I think, honestly, this was a bit greedy of me because, again, if they've got Mobius, then that's a bit unfortunate for us. But I guess if they get Duo, that's more unfortunate for us. So I'd rather just do this. But we do hit the Serpent again off the Dawn. I guess we just never can hit with that Dawn now. They go for a Decree here, which is quite unfortunate, because it does shut off our Mirror Force and our Threatening Roar, which we did bring in because we saw that they were on Monarchs, so I figured they might be on Stein as well. They go for the Pot here, drawing 2, and then they're going to set 1, pass back to us. We draw a Solemn, which is pretty good. Or actually, no, it's terrible because the Decree's on field. So yeah, actually that Solemn's pretty bad. But we'll attack into the set with the Dawn first, because if it's something that can't resist the Dawn, then we can get in for lethal damage here. Unfortunately for us, it is a Gravekeeper Spy, so they'll be able to bring in another Spy here, and that's kind of rough. But again, we do have the BLS set up, so we should be able to do something with that. They go for a Dawn, or not a Dawn, a Zaborg, pop the Dawn, and then they attack into the Blade Knight here. So they've cleared a board, but again, we do have BLS, so I feel pretty good about that. We also have Book Protect the BLS. We're going to banish Light and Dark here, bring out the BLS here, and then we're going to attack over both their monsters. We could have also banished here, but I figured the Royal Decree's up, so there isn't much that really, threatens this. If they got Book of Moon, then that's unfortunate, but they can't really easily deal with the Blackluster Soldier when it's set face down, because Snatch Shield or Brain Con doesn't work on it. So I feel fine with that. Our opponent's going to go for a Brain Con here. We got the book for the BLS, and that will just be the end of the game, actually. They're just going to set 2, pass back to us. We've got Knock for that, though. We've also got Kaiku as well, so yeah, this is just way the end of the game. And yeah, it's kind of rough. The set was just a Solemn that was dead under Decree there. And as a note, I just want to bring up the reason why they were able to Brain Control the BLS is because Brain Control this time had its original text, which did not have the clause about, targeting one face-up monster your opponent controls like being normal summoned or set. It's just one face-up monster your opponent controls. So if you do set down a monster targeted by Brain Control, it won't be able to take control of that monster because it does say take control of that target as opposed to just take control of the card, I guess. And when something does say that target, it does have to be, if it was really targeted face up, it has to be face up. And if you set it down, it will then not go through. So that's why that play at the end worked there. And yeah, I think this was a very good showing for the Warrior deck. I did not play it perfectly. Again, I'm not the best at this deck, but I thought it would be fun to take it for a whirl and show that it can still do stuff in this format. The format is a lot more explosive, but Warriors is just a standard good deck. It's just made up of a bunch of big guys that just attack in every turn, try and, trade 1-for-1 a lot. And that can be very good against a format where people are playing more Stein combo decks, right? It's kind of like how, Warriors can do very well against Cast Turbo, getting in before they have a chance to really set up their stuff. And, they can do sort of the same thing against a lot of the Stein decks, even though the Stein decks do have a bit of a faster clock than the Cast Turbo decks generally do. But as long as you can get in 3,000 damage before they can get out Stein, then that's usually enough to be pretty good against those decks. So, I think Warriors is a very good spot in this metagame. I'm not sure if it's the best deck in the format, but it definitely is up there. And I could definitely see this getting more tournament success in the future. But what do you all think of the deck? Do you think that I'm overhyping Warriors, or do you think that this deck has fallen off a lot in this format compared to GOAT? Or do you think that this deck is actually better than a lot of these Stein decks running around, and that just the consistency of it is just enough to catapult this to the best deck of the format? Let me know down in the comments below. Also, if you do enjoy this sort of content, please do subscribe to the channel. It really does help a lot. I'd really like to reach 1,400 subscribers by the end of the month, and we're on pace to make it there. And maybe if we make it there early enough, then we could even up that goal up to 1,500. That'd be really cool to see. Also, if you want to support me directly, I do have a Patreon, link in the description down below. And if you join the Patreon, you get a shout out in these videos. So big shout outs to GMYFS, Tyler Compton, Dump Truck, Bren Donker, Rince Wind, and Porkchop Coon. It really does mean a lot to me that you all support me in this way and encourage me to make more videos like this in the future. Also, again, if you do want to play games in this format or any other formats that feature on the channel, definitely head over to the YGO from Zero Discord server, link in the description down below. But I hope you enjoyed as always, and until next time, I've been Ben from YGO from Zero, and I'm signing off.